really happy for this opportunity. I met Vivach and Hapik were among the first people that I met here in AltSpace in VR. And just it's really fun hearing about Fuckup nights as well, too. I think it's a really important thing. Been involved in the startup community here in Hong Kong. I founded the first incubator accelerator here. If you've heard of Sophia the robot or Singularity.net, an ICO that was done, those kind of came out of our incubator accelerator. More recently, there's a Rio chain, which is a kind of a blockchain company that raised about 20 mil. That came out of our through the relationships here, everything as well. So I've been fairly active kind of in the startup community all around, and I'm kind of an advisor to several companies as well. But when Hapik first asked me to come speak at this, I had to sit back and think a bit. It led to reflection, and as Alia mentioned, in terms of being vulnerable and really introspective, for me, when I really think about failures, what failures have I kind of encountered? I just wanted to talk about my relationship, because and so I don't know if you've heard, those of you that are here that have kind of read the blurb, but I've been married for about a little bit about my background. I grew up in the United States. I was born in Chicago. If you look at the picture, I'm a Chinese American. The picture was actually taken at the TED conference. And I kind of grew up mostly in Los Angeles. Growing up, it's very interesting because I am Chinese. My mother and father are Chinese. I was born in the United States, and so I'm Chinese American. And growing up, I don't know if you know, but in the United States, they have been mainly around COVID and everything. There's been a lot of prejudice and everything around Chinese. Asian Americans, they call it the China virus, even, Wuhan and everything, and Trump tried to politicize it, I think, as well too. And so a lot of people get beat up just because they're on the streets and someone's unhappy and the person is Chinese or Asian looking. And so that's happened very recently. But me growing up, if you think about African Americans, there's kind of an identity and they have their heroes. If you look at Hispanics and Latinos, they have their heroes and everything too. If you look at Asian Americans, there aren't that many heroes out there. More and more now in the media, but unfortunately, 30 plus years later, not much has changed. So for me, I identify with American, and culturally I'm American, but I'm also Chinese, and so there is that mix. Because there are no kind of iconic role models in kind of Asian America, you have some people that speak Chinese, like I can speak Mandarin, 我会讲国语, but I can't read or write. Other people can't speak at all. Some people can speak, read, and write fluently, and so there's a big kind of identity situation that happens. And then also for me, just a little bit of my background too is I'm actually the 6th generation of professors on my father's side. I teach at a university, I'm tenured. My dad teaches at a university, he was tenured. His dad, his dad, his dad, his dad, and his dad, all the way kind of down the line, we're kind of all academics. So I've been in this area. My PhD is actually in electrical engineering and computer science. I've been in digital entertainment for about 30 years. And part of this searching process that's happened usually happens around your 20s or so. What happened with me was I have a degree in electrical engineering, computer science, all this pressure to achieve and to go into academia. And what happened was I was an undergrad. I worked at Bell Labs in New Jersey for about 6 months. I did an internship there, a co-op position. And it was during that time that I realized that real life as an engineer sucks really bad. So you're basically working all day, and then the weekends you're just covering so that you can work all week again next week. So what happened when I was at Bell Labs is I took the money that I made and I bought a recording studio, bought a video toaster, got actually involved with a lot of Asian American issues. I did the first Asian American rap in the early 90s as well. And then what happened was I ended up at USC, University of Southern California. Thesis advisor went to teach at USC. I was his last PhD student, so I went along. And at USC, I don't know if you're familiar, it's a university in Los Angeles. They've got probably the best film school in the world and a top 20 engineering school. I was involved in a program to help develop an NSF ERC grant, a National Science Foundation ERC grant, where we're setting up this integrated media systems center. And eventually, so I was kind of hired as a research assistant professor, and that's the start of my career after I finished my PhD, to help develop this grant. And we, at the end of it, we got about $8.8 million a year for 11 years, a big NSF ERC grant. And for me, multimedia seemed like the natural thing because it combines kind of the technology side of things, kind of the creative art and design side as well too. So got this grant, and then from that I ended up giving a lot of talks. One of the talks was to this woman who is now my wife, who's in Hong Kong. So there was an earlier, the woman earlier was talking about intuition, and something about meeting my wife. This woman at that time, 20 years ago, just had this feeling that I would kind of see her again and meet her again. And I was living in LA, and I was teaching at USC. And what happened was I had a conference to go to here in Asia, and I stopped through Hong Kong, and I met Lily, who is now my wife, and then we kind of fell in love, and we got married, and I moved to Hong Kong. And so I've been in Hong Kong for the last 25 or so years. I've been in digital entertainment for about over 30 years or so. I run this master's in multimedia and entertainment technology program at the university here. So I moved to Hong Kong. I taught at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Then I taught at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, where I'm at now, that I've been for about 22, 23 years. And so we got married, and we're still married, and we have 4 children now as well too. But my wife and I are very different. And when we did get married, I actually wrote a song for her, which I wrote the first verse of it in my my talk description. But if you'd like, I can sing you the song if you like. I don't know if it's appropriate here. Getting some emojis here. Okay. And so the lyric and the song that I wrote, and so we got married at the Grand Hall of the Convention Center. We had 800 people. The chief executive was there and everything. It was a really grand occasion. And I like I mentioned, I write music when I had the recording studio. And I did the first Asian American rap. I did a whole musical. I was big into musical theater. And so when I got married, they were going through the schedule, and then they looked at me and they said, Gino, are you still singing a song? Are you gonna still do this song? I was like, oh shoot, I haven't finished it yet. And so I sat there, and within the next 20 minutes, the rest of the lyric for the song came out. But I had the first verse for many months before. And the song that I wrote for my wife, which is our wedding song, goes, when I first laid eyes on you, I already knew that you were my destiny. My mission since then has primarily been to make you feel the same for me. And now that we'll be together for the rest of eternity, I'd like to share a few thoughts, if I could, with my sweet bride Lily. Before you, I wandered the world, pondering what it means to be all alone, with no one to share all that I have seen. Suddenly you burst into my life, bringing peace, love, and harmony. I knew I had to make you my wife. You make my life complete. First, it wasn't easy, for what do I have but me? How to catch a butterfly that's also busy as a bee. Don't know what it was that persuaded you to relent finally. Patience, perseverance, essential qualities. Now we'll spend each day and every night side by side, hiking along the trail of life, stride by stride. Pledge to care and provide for you with all my might. And if we disagree, my love, I know, say you're right. For let nothing come between us as we strive to reach new heights. And let the love that's between us serve as our guide. Yeah, that was the marriage song. And so I sang the song, and I still feel it to this day, after 20 plus years of marriage. Like, what's happened with this, and through 20 years and four children, of the issues that we're dealing with right now is the youngest son goes out partying all night, is gone all the weekends and everything, and is 17 right now. My oldest is 21. Is that through relationship and through marriage, for me at least, especially with that first line, first paragraph of that, is this is my kind of admitted fuck up, is I feel like I'm a failure. I don't feel that my wife loves me the way I love her or that I'd like to be loved. And so with that, despite 22 plus years, we're on our 23rd year right now. And with four kids, my oldest is at Johns Hopkins. My number two is at UC Berkeley studying architecture. My third is at Blair Academy, and our youngest is 12, still here in Hong Kong. Is through, I still don't feel like I've achieved this mission since then, is to make you feel the same for me. And so part of this talk today is I just wanted to kind of reflect on this and share with you some of the things that I've learned through all of this, in terms of kind of expectations, in terms of working together, towards building and creating a family. And I think part of the reason why I want to talk about this too is as some of the people here in this room are about to start a family as well. And so any week now, I think. And so I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about this. And so for me, you may have heard, I kind of grew up in the United States, and the way that we look at things and the way that we look at parenting and all of this is very different from the way they do things in the East. So kind of I grew up in Hong Kong. My wife actually was raised in Hong Kong. She studied at USC. She studied in the United States. Mostly she's kind of been in Hong Kong. I don't know if you know about Hong Kong, but if you hear about the protests and everything that have happened here, that Hong Kong is kind of like being Asian American. It's interesting because am I Chinese? Am I American? There's an identity issue. You're a minority. In Hong Kong, am I British? Am I Chinese? Am I a Hong Konger? What does it mean to be a Hong Konger? There's still a kind of an identity issue. Interesting thing here in Hong Kong is that you're the majority. It used to be a colony. I don't know if you guys know, but Hong Kong used to be part of China. And then the UK took it over as part of an agreement after a war, and they held on to it for about 150 years, and it grew and it thrived. It was the gateway between China and the West for a large part of the time. But now, as China has become more more modernized and liberalized and more capitalistic. The role of Hong Kong has changed, but the culture is very different. And so again, earlier, there was a conversation about intuition. So something about me in meeting my wife, and I don't know what it was. My, my mother has a fun story about this where I went to her and I said, hey, I met my future wife and everything. But and I saw her, and then something in me said that this is the one, and made me leave security and of growing up and everything, kind of in the United States, and then moving to Hong Kong, and then coming into a completely different culture. So when I grew up, kids would run around. The childhood would be I'd goof off a lot. I grew up in Culver City, so I'd sneak into the back lot of the MGM studios, and you could kind of go off and goof off and ride bikes with your friends and everything. That's kind of the way kind of we grew up kind of in the United States, or at least I grew up. Here in Asia, for our kids, pretty much 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., their schedules are completely full. There's teaching, there's tutoring and everything. And the value systems and everything are completely different. Whereas a lot of times in the West, you value freedom and free speech and speaking for yourself and being assertive. Whereas in Asia, you're kind of part of the group. It's if you look at, everyone's still wearing masks. Hong Kong, and because of this, there are advantages of this to this too. Just culturally, you don't stick out, but you kind of follow things. It's still fairly materialistic, so it's kind of money oriented and everything. Although the society and the culture is very cohesive. Right? So Hong Kong has had like no COVID cases for like 40 plus days now, where there have been zero locally transmitted COVID cases. Yet everyone's still wearing masks and everyone's looking after each other. If you go onto a bus or a subway, naturally, if an elder comes or someone with a child, someone will naturally get up. In fact, there's a competition to get up, provide a seat for them. So the culture and the mentality has been very, very different. We have my father-in-law has 20 grandchildren. Every Sunday we used to have lunch together. So, and all of the kids and all of it's fairly traditional in this way, Asian. And for me and my wife, my wife kind of is fairly independent, and she has her career, and I'm kind of dependent, and I have my career too, on the education side. And we work, my perspective, we kind of work together on this. But again, our cultures are different. And so a large part of our relationship has been kind of finding this middle ground to kind of engage. And so for me, kind of being more Western, or kind of physical, more showy, and then for her, very simple life. Like, have you guys seen I guess Netflix? We've been binge watching shows. And so the idea of a good time is just to sit and just kind of to share time together. That's the valuable thing. I used to travel a lot. I'd give a lot of talks. And so with that, there are a lot of strains, because the way that I view parenting and the way that my wife views parenting are very different. And so just even in terms of, one of the things I should mention, this train go by, I'm hearing a train here, is even just things like decisions are made. One of the things I remember, just in terms of how we resolve differences, is when our kids were born, my wife wanted to have them baptized Catholic. That was a very important thing for her. So we get into these discussions, and I used the conversations to get to know her better and everything as well. But we just kind of spoke in terms of values and everything. And she's like, "Hey, would like to have the kids baptized Catholic." And then I was like, "Well, maybe they should decide which religion they should choose." And And what happened was, we'd go back and forth, and she'd say, well, when her family was poor, church provided milk powder and really helped them and everything. And she would make these arguments, and I was, well, the church, they also did the Inquisition, right? And so you can kind of go back and forth on this. And what happened was, we were on a trip together with our family to Hawaii, went swimming with dolphins. And then I was following on to give some talks in the United States, and she was coming back to Hong Kong. And I found out that she was going to have the kids baptized, while I was away. I was like, wait a minute, and so DEF CON, you go up to DEF CON 6. Like, wait, that's not really cool. What if our daughter was getting married and I wasn't able to make you just have the wedding without me? So part of this is to really looking at why are we doing this? So I asked her, and this led into a discussion of what is the significance of why do you really insist unilaterally to have our kids baptized Catholic? And then what came out in our conversation is it turns out it was because she felt it was very important for the kids to have a spiritual education, not just a secular one in school. I'm like, well, I can agree with that, but I just don't think it should be Catholic faith. They should be able to search it, explore it on their own. And the spirituality is an important part of life, and it's something that they should explore and develop within. I said, okay, that's the main issue, and I agree with that. We just disagree in terms of which religion it should be. So I said to her, tell you what, you have my blessings to have the kids baptized Catholic, because I was going to do it anyways. I get to take the kids on a spiritual retreat, actually one year for at least a week. And then she agreed to that, because that also addressed the importance of a spiritual education for the kids. And then she said, okay, but you can't take them to India until they're at least 12, because of hygiene and kidnapping and all this other stuff. I was like, okay. So we shook on it, and we were able to come up with compromises. And through our marriage, we were able to make these compromises by listening to each other, figuring out what is the core issue underneath the conflict, where can we find the common ground, and then build like a win-win situation that addresses it. That's one thing that has been helpful for our marriage. And the second, I mentioned earlier, is that in honesty, she really doesn't need me. I really don't need her. I travel around the world. I've got friends around the world. I've got my life mission as well, too. And so we don't really need each other, but we spend time together. And there have been rocky periods as well, too. When I was traveling, she went through a political crisis situation, kind of around the early in her about years ago or so, and we've also had really wonderful experiences too with and I'm just pretty excited for Hapik and Vach in terms of how many of you are parents? Are any of you married? Parents? Kids? No? So wedding is one thing. Having a partner to share your life with is one thing, and really it's a sounding, to me at least, a relationship is a sounding board to help uncover your own traumas. And what is it that's not accepting this? Why do I feel unsafe here psychologically or whatever in relation to whatever I'm doing and what the context is? To have someone that can mean something to you, that can evoke these kind of things, and realizing that it's there to help uncover the triggers that you may have had and the wounds is the most valuable thing of a relationship. And so having that is important, but then also the experience of having a child. And there's something, I'm going to tear up when I talk about it right now. And there's a difference between knowing something conceptually, knowing it experientially. What happens, especially the first child, is there's going to be this moment where you're holding her hand. There's this labor, this kind of intense thing happens. Then the wife is kind of in the hospital bed, kind of recovering. And then, yeah, see, I can feel it bring up right now. And then the husband, and I'm there kind of just comforting her. Then the nurse brings this baby in and hands it to you and to the mother for the first time. And then there's just this feeling of, before it was just you and me, and now it's us, and now it's us, and look at what we have now. And it's just the most amazing experience. And it's simple, it's natural, but I'm just kind of tearing up remembering it. And it's one of these things where, Patch, you should remember me telling you this, because when it happens to you, you're going to go, oh, that's the thing that Gino was talking about. But if you haven't had the experience, conceptually you'd be like, oh, really? Oh, okay, I can see how that. Oh, okay, that's so sweet and everything. When it's you, think back on your relationship and everything that it took to get you there, and just the miracle that life is. It's really, really tremendous. One more thing I'd like to share, related to kids, is I remember when my son Chinet was about 4 years old. I was teaching him how to play the game Battleship. The thing where you call out a letter and a number, and you put a peg in, and we were playing together. And we were about to win, and there was just one more peg to put in, and then we would have won. It was very close. And so I said, okay, Chinet, that's his name, Chinet. I was like, where should we go next? And then he would answer, I was like, no, that's not it. Oh, can you come up with another one? And then he would answer wrong again. And then I was like, no, that's not it. I was like, wait, can you show me, the difference between red and white? Can you show me the difference between red and white? Then I look down, and he's like frozen. He's like kind of frozen there. Then I look at myself. I'm like, wait a minute. This is just a game. Why am I getting so frustrated? And why am I getting so angry, frustrated at my son? It's just a silly game. Why am I so upset with him, on this? And what dawned on me was that's the way my father treated me when I was young. And it's one of these things where you have all of these in your subconscious, and then they don't really play them out again until you get into a similar situation. And I think kids will do that. And so all of these things from your childhood come back, and you'll start really looking at that. And again, it's all helping you to understand and to resolve these wounds that may have come up before, that have happened to you, earlier traumas and things that have happened to you, and kind of rear their head and take you out of kind of this joy, wonder, gratitude, this right here, right now, it's good to be alive experience. It kicks you into this fear, need, desire, frustration, anger, etc. And but just being mindful of what the triggers are. Kids will do that, and your significant other will definitely do that. And so one of the big things around this is that the relationship, whether it's a relationship in a family or a startup company, all of this, everything that you're doing, is just context for your own personal development. As you live your life, these things are happening, and they're there to help you. And the main thing isn't doing the goal or getting the gold medal or in the game, making the money, whatever. It's really context for you in your development as a person. And that's kind of the most important thing. And if you look at that, that's a really important thing. One of the areas, my big failure now, and this I'll have to share with you, my big failure, and this ties into the culture difference, is just a couple months ago, my sister-in-law, we were at lunch, and my sister-in-law looked at me very intensely. She looked at me and she pointed her finger and said, "Gino, are you Chinese or are you American?" She asked this in a very kind of intense way. I'm like, what? Chinese American, what? No, are you Chinese or are you American? Like, what does that mean? And she said, well, I'm Chinese. Her husband, her name's Anne, Raymond is also Chinese. And we'll fight and we'll argue and everything, but we know we're going to be together forever. We're Chinese. That's just the way things are. You are, but your commitments are and everything. Versus if you're American, it's like, oh no, this is better, or this isn't really matching me, and oh, I feel better there. They understand me more, and all of this other stuff, and I'm just going to go where I feel more comfortable, or I'm treated better, or respected better, or what have you. But it's all kind of conditional, and hey, we were together, we had the right moment, we learned from each other, we were there for the right moment, but it was time for us to move on and all this other stuff, which from her perspective was more kind of the American view. And that hit me hard. Part of this too related to our family, and this is related to the core of the issue that I have, my wife and I, too, is that part of me, it didn't really sink in until kind of my sister-in-law put this to me. Because I always, even just growing up, even parenting, I look at things kind of more of a Western perspective. From an Eastern perspective, your whole life is for your kids. And actually, that's how my parents were with me, being Chinese. It's like their whole life and their whole mission was to raise the kids and make sure the kids do well. I have a lot of other friends here in Hong Kong, and their big thing is, I'm making all this money. I don't know why I'm doing it. When I die, it's all going to my kids. And it's really about, making sure the kids will go and do better than you do. And your whole life as a parent, your whole mission, your primary mission is that. So if you look at what happens in nature, I don't know if you've seen the film Octopus, My Teacher, or, as a male, I used to think about this sometimes with my wife at times, that after you have kids, as a male, train going by again, if you're a praying mantis, they actually kill you. That's your whole purpose of your life, is for the kids. And in a large part, there's a large part of Asian culture lives from that. The thing is, my wife has been living those values. And from her perspective, my perspective, I married a very capable wife. We have nannies and everything, and I'm very grateful, and our kids are doing really well. From my wife's perspective, it's like she feels like she's doing the role of the mother, the role of the father, and doing all of this. Then me, as just myself, I haven't really matched her, at this level that she's at. So with that comes kind of a bit of resentment and all of this. I see it as a culture difference and a value difference, but for her, it's like, hey, yeah, I have to carry all the weight. I have to worry about all of this stuff and everything. And so there's some resentment there. And for me, I kind of do the balancing thing. As long as the family and the kids are taken care of and the basics are there, that's good. And I actually spent a lot of time traveling as well too. So this leads to the biggest lesson I've learned now, especially with the pandemic, I'd like to share with all of you, is that if you have a choice between your startup and your career, or your wife and your family, choose family, always. And it took me 20 years or so and this culture difference to really understand this. And that's the main message. And in Chinese, there's a saying where you first take care of yourself, take care of your own health and your body, then you take care of your family, then you take care of the community, and then you take care of the world and everything. And so it goes in that order. Because if you don't take care of yourself, and then if you don't take care of your family, then it's easy to get lost in, oh, I have to do this. Oh, this is my mission, and we have to do this startup and everything. And all of this is really important. But your own health is important. And then especially if you have the responsibility of children and everything, your family is also very important. Not only their financial well-being and food and all this other stuff, but their psychological well-being too. And that's where I feel I failed a bit. And then from that comes your company or your startup, your community, and then the planet. And if we had things in that order more, I think the world would be in much better shape. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.